Youth Day, and what is your message to us as young graduates, as a community of young graduates, community of graduates focusing on the goal of being employable, not just searching for jobs? What is our role in nation building as a nation? What's our role in the economy as a whole? So I'm leaving the stage for you, Mr. Michael, on that presentation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Omeke, for the generous introduction. It's very, it gladdens my heart to see the community of Get Work community to have grown to where it is today. I remember that I was supposed to be at the forum last year when you launched.
Yes.
But I was
right.
on the trip. So I had to get my partner, Wole Odetayo, to represent me at the event. And so I'm glad that at least maybe one of the upsides of this pandemic is that I'm able to now have time to actually join you guys on this Instagram Live today on the International Youth Day 2020. I made a joke that technically, based on the international and global definition of a youth, most people do not know.
Mr. Michael, they're asking you to turn your camera. It seems to be on your horizontal way. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Okay. Yes, it is better. Yeah.
All right. So,
thank you.
Technically, I was telling Bumi before I got live, we try to define who a youth is, right? Definition varies very widely. As, you know, in Nigeria, you see a 60-year-old youth leader. And you begin to wonder if the definition... Indeed, United Nations define the youth as someone between the age of 16 and 24. That definition is the United Nations definition. The African Union, as well as NEPAD, has defined the youth as someone who is between the age of 18 and 30 years old. And World Bank have my favorite definition because it allows me to have an extended youthful age. That the youth is between the age of 16 and 35. So for the sake of being more inclusive and because
the place to
because we look at the prior constitution of Nigeria before it was amended in last year when they had the not too young to run bill that was passed in the National Assembly as an amendment to the constitution. The age in which you are qualified to run as Nigerian president was set at 35. It is still true today that the age to qualify to be a member of the National Assembly, specifically the Senate and the House of Senate, is still 35. So despite the not young to run, the Senate dropped their age for the president and the governors to 30, but they did not drop the one for the senators. So, and if we assume the senators are the grand old men of the republic, which are supposed to deliberate and moderate the actions of their more rapacious, youthful cousins in the House of Representatives, then I think the good definition that the age of 35, we can accept it for the purpose of this conversation. When we talk about nation building, there are two words. So the role of youth. So I want to first define the topic, right? So we've talked about the role of youth. So we define who the youth is. So we are talking about up to the age of 35, 16 to 35. And then let's now define what we mean by nation building. Nation building as the concept of building a nation. The assumption is that there's no nation that reaches a point of perfection beyond where it needs to be built. It is a continuous work, it's a continuous process that passes from one generation to the next generation. And so when you are talking about nation building, you are not focused on building a country, which is a very different definition. You're not talking about building a union, which is also a different thing. We are talking about building a nation. What's the nation? A nation is a group of people that have decided to come together, either by act of commission or by act of commission. It doesn't have to be a willing union, no. Nations, in fact, the act of history is that nations are most
Hello, Mr. Anyofe.
The defeat of one started the movement towards nationhood when the Northern Protectorate and the Southern Protectorate and the colony of Lagos were now recognized as part of the British Empire separately in 1900. In 1900, we started our separate journey. The first Nigerians were born. And I have what I call the stories of the generations. Nigeria has 4 generations already born, and we are now in our 5th generation that is being born. And I will go through it in 5 minutes if you allow me. The first Nigerians were born in 1900. These Nigerians were the Nigerians that were born under the rule of the British Empire. The like of Obafemi Awolowo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Ahmadu Bello, all of these guys were the first people who were born into an area recognized as, quote and unquote, were the first generations of Nigerians of this nation. They had one singular challenge. The challenge of their generation was how to become free from the shackles of British imperialism. Whether you and I like our independence or not, that generation achieved its goal on October 1st, 1960. So the first generation of Nigerians, those who were born between 1900 and 1925, those of them who took on the mantle, the challenge of their own generation, which was to make Nigeria independent, achieve their goal. Their independence, you might not like it. You might call it Mickey Mouse independence. You might say it does not include economic independence and all the qualities of the independence, but that's your problem. That generation achieved its goal. It made its nation free. And a vast majority of the people that achieved that goal were Nigerian youths. In fact, the first political movement in Nigeria that actually won a seat in the Legislative Council of Lagos was the Nigerian Youth Movement to the NC, National Council for Cameroons and Nigeria, led by Abat Macaulay. The Nigerian Youth Movement won seats in the Lagos Legislative Council. So Nigerian youths were the ones that decided, those ones who were then born between 1900 and 1925. My grandfather was born in 1909. Were the ones that decided enough is enough. The British man, yes, came to this territory and met multiple nations. The whole of even southwestern Nigeria today, which we call, was made up of nothing less than 40 nations. The Ikitis were their own nation, the Ijeshas were their own nation, the Ibadan, they were fighting, they were involved in the Kiriji War, they were involved in now we look at intra-ethnic violence before the British came. Then there was some peace that was signed that ended the Kiriji War. But in 1900, we now started to have Nigerians. And they said, no, we want to be free from the British influence. We want to be Nigerians. We want to be independent. And youth like yourself led that movement. And that became a